how much does our environment really shape us? I mean, really shape who we become? We're going to dig into that question by looking at two of the world's first great civilizations, each one built around a river, but with two completely different stories. This isn't just history. It's about how a river can literally create two different futures for humanity.
To really get the first story, I want you to imagine you're right there, in it. Picture this. You're part of one of 6 small villages, all clustered along the same river. You've got the same language, the same culture. You're basically all neighbors. But then, the very thing your world is built on starts to fail. The river, your source for everything, it just shrinks. No warning. The water level drops, the fields get crusty and dry, and all of a sudden, there is not enough to go around. So, what do?
Well, at first, you try to be reasonable, right? You talk it out with the other villagers, you try to figure out a fair way to share what's left. It's the sensible thing to do.
But that fails. People are getting desperate, and when that happens, the talking gets a lot tougher. Now you're making threats. You're warning those other villages to back off from what little water you've got.
You figure out pretty quick you can't do this alone, so you find another village, one you think you can trust, and you team up. Strength in numbers. You hope that's the key to survival. But in a world where there's not enough to go around, loyalty is, well, it's a luxury you can't afford. The river shrinks again, and suddenly your ally's survival is in direct conflict with your own. That bond you made, yeah, it's gone. Trust just evaporates. And this is how it ends. This is a last stop. When talking is done, when threats don't work, when alliances are worthless, there's only one thing left. You fight. You go to war over the most basic thing in the world, water. And here's the thing. Even if you won the war, you still lost. Everybody did. In this kind of constant, brutal conflict, nobody comes out okay. Not even the winner. The price is just too high. That whole experience you just lived through in your head, that's the story of Mesopotamia. This was a civilization shaped by the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. And yeah, they were life-giving, but they were also violent, chaotic, and totally unpredictable. That uncertainty created a world where power was always up for grabs, cities rose and fell, and empires were basically built on quicksand. Okay, let's just take a breath. Let's leave that chaotic world behind for a minute. I want you to completely clear your head and picture something totally different. We're going to travel west to a different land with a very different kind of river. This is not the Tigris or the Euphrates. This is the Nile. And let me tell you, it plays by a whole different set of rules. The secret here, the absolute game changer, is reliability. The Nile floods every single year, bringing fresh, fertile soil to the farmland. But, and this is the key, it doesn't do it randomly. It's not violent. It happens predictably, like clockwork. It's a gentle, dependable gift. And that one fact changes absolutely everything. When your source of life is a predictable gift instead of a constant struggle, you don't have to fight your neighbors just to make it to the next harvest. That state of constant crisis, it's just gone. With that basic question of survival pretty much solved, a whole new world of possibilities opens up. Instead of just fighting over scraps, the people living along this river could actually, build something together. They could create a totally new way of life. This stability led to a completely different kind of society. They unified early on, creating one big, cohesive country. They centralized all their power under a single ruler, the pharaoh. And because they weren't fighting each other, they could work together, building these massive projects to make the most of the Nile's predictable gift. They built an empire that would last for thousands of years. So let's just lay it all out. It's such a perfect contrast. Over in Mesopotamia, you've got random floods leading to scarcity, which leads to conflict and these weak temporary alliances. But in Egypt, predictable floods create abundance, which makes cooperation and unification possible, leading to a strong central government. It all comes back to the personality of the river. Now, it is so tempting to look at this and just say, well, Egypt's way was obviously better. But that's not really the point. It wasn't better, it was just different. A different river created a different set of challenges, which naturally led to a different set of solutions, and a completely different kind of civilization. Just think back to the beginning of this explainer. I asked you to live through that Mesopotamian experience.
You felt that anxiety of never having enough. You had to make and break alliances just to survive. You understood firsthand the incredibly high price of ambition in a world defined by scarcity. That's a fundamentally different reality from one of stability and abundance. So the goal here is not to pick a winner. This wasn't some kind of competition. The question isn't who did a better job with their river, because that totally misses the bigger picture, which is just how powerfully our geography can steer our destiny.
And we have to remember what was at stake. For these people, this wasn't just some interesting thought experiment. Things like art, philosophy, building empires, those are all luxuries. They come after you solve the first, most important problem. Survival was everything. And that brings us to the real question we should be asking. When you look at these two models, one born from chaos and competition, the other from predictability and cooperation, which one, in the end, created a system that allowed more people to just survive? It's a big question and one that echoes way beyond the ancient world.